Thank you. My name is Barb Hedrick. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley. Will be your moderator for this evening. We have two candidates with us from District 41. A third one may show up. We will cross our fingers he was able to come. A fourth candidate was not able to come, and I'll be reading a statement from that person. Thank you to all the candidates for joining us for this forum. And thank you to the city of Fargo for providing the space in the lovely City Commission chamber for doing this and for recording this forum for the PEG TV channel, TV Fargo 56. And this recording will be posted on our League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley Facebook page at a later date, as soon as we can. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or find us on Facebook or talk to one of myself or Bailey or any other of the volunteers who are here tonight. We'd love to have you. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. These are the rules that we'll be following this evening. We have several questions already committed on cards. If you'd like to do so, please do. And just hold it up, and then one of our volunteers will take it from you and bring it to me. We do review for clarity and for repetition, but otherwise we'll ask the question as they are read as completely as we can. Do remember, I do want to warn you that the candidates only have 1 minute to answer, so keep that in mind when you're writing your questions. Our candidates tonight are from District 41, Megan Edwardson and Lillian Jones. And each of them will have a 1 minute opening statement. And then for each question, each candidate will be able to answer in 1 minute increments. There is a timer in the back who will keep the time of 1 minute or around then. Since there's only two of you, I told him to be gentle and how quickly he starts the timer. And then you will hear a ding if you do get to 1 minute, and just finish your thought as quickly as you can. After the questions are completed, we will have another 1 minute closing statement. Now tonight, one of the candidates who could not be here, Michelle Strinden, did send us a statement, and we always agree for those who are not able to attend because of previous commitments to be willing to read their statement beforehand. So this is from Michelle Strinden, running in District 41. Good evening. I regret that I cannot join you this evening. I had a family gathering that was planned earlier this year that unfortunately could not be rescheduled. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and for allowing me to submit a statement. For the past 4 years, I've had the honor of serving my neighbors as their state representative. In that time, I have focused on getting real results for my constituents. I have introduced and worked with colleagues across the aisle to pass 2 bills addressing dyslexia through early screening and research-based remediation strategies. I have worked with Governor Burgum on issues ranging from the FM diversion to increasing substance abuse disorder voucher dollars and on child care. If reelected, my top 3 priorities will be to make quality child care more affordable for everyday working families, partner with Governor Burgum to provide real tax relief to hardworking North Dakota families, and strengthen our education and behavioral health systems through my work on the appropriations committees. Serving my neighbors in South Fargo's District 41 has been the honor of a lifetime, and I hope to earn your support this November. I would gladly answer any questions that anyone may have. You may contact me through info on my website, michellestrinden.com, or my Facebook page, Representative Michelle Strinden, District 41. Sincerely, Michelle Strinden. So we will start with opening statements. Megan, you'll go first, and then with the first question, we'll start with Lillian. We'll go back and forth that way. Megan, go ahead.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. Thanks, Barb, and thanks for everybody in the audience for being here. As a field representative for U.S. Senator Heidi Heitkamp, I have a strong background in constituent services. I did federal casework on issues such as Veterans Affairs, military, immigration, Social Security, and healthcare. The status quo is not working in Bismarck. It's time to elect leaders that will fight for women's reproductive health rights, fight for a woman's right to choose, make sure that working families in North Dakota have a voice in Bismarck. I am that fresh new perspective that Bismarck needs, and I hope to get your vote on November 8th.
Thank you. Lillian?
Thanks again to the League for hosting this evening's forum. My name is Lillian Jones, and I've lived in District 41 since I moved to Fargo in 2009. I'm an enrolled member of the Hidatsa and Arikara tribes of the MHA Nation on Fort Berthold. I am a paralegal consultant and advocate for women, children, and families, also survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I bring experience and a voice to the table that speaks to the future for those who we will never meet and honors the past, those who laid a foundation for us. I believe in the dignity of all persons, no matter their familial or economic status, ethnicity, age, ability, gender, or identity, and I will defend it. I believe in a woman's absolute right to body autonomy and the integrity of the family and their right to make decisions that affect their future. I'm running for this seat because I'm concerned about the future, and I look forward to working with my legislative colleagues for a brighter future.
Thank you. So this is the first question, and Lillian, we start with you. What experience do you have that qualifies you for this position?
Oh, for one, I've served on a number of boards. One of the things that I do believe in, and I've always believed in, it's a value my grandmother instilled in me, is you commit to your community, you involve yourself, you contribute. And as part of the Fargo community, I've carried my service mentality into this community by serving on local boards such as PTA boards. I've served on the North Dakota Human Rights Coalition and the North Dakota Women's Network's boards of directors. I operated, I didn't operate. My husband and I had a disability law office where I served as the paralegal there and continued my tribal court advocacy on behalf of families.
Megan?
I worked for U.S. Senator Heidi Heitkamp for nearly 4 years. My background, again, is in constituent services. I will carry that with me to Bismarck. It's time to fight for working families. I had to work across the aisle to find solutions for all of Senator Heitkamp's constituents, and I vowed to do that in Bismarck.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Megan. A couple of people have asked about finding adequate childcare is a problem in North Dakota. How should the legislature address this issue?
The legislature needs to increase funding so that our working families do not have to choose between going back to work and providing getting their kids back into daycare. We need to also make sure that our childcare workers are paid a living wage so that daycare facilities are able to be staffed adequately.
Thank you. Lillian?
I believe that we could put the legacy fund to use and put some of those legacy dollars into our future generations. One of the things that we have no deficit, we are a very wealthy state, and it's time to direct some of those dollars. What I see is potentially working through and with the Bank of North Dakota on small business loans or grants for the development of the centers and to help bolster the training for staff. This is a critical element in our infrastructure. People need to be able to have daycare in order to get to work, and there are plenty of jobs out there. And there need to be more on the way, especially with the growth and development of the community, and in this area specifically for job creation and development. But we can't have that without childcare.
Thank you. First, the next question, start with you, Lillian. There is a severe teacher shortage in North Dakota. How should the legislature address this?
One thing that the legislature could do is stay out of the curriculum development business and leave the education to the qualified educators who earned their degrees to provide that education. That would be one. And I'm sorry, that's a hot topic for me. Could you please restate your
Sure.
question?
It basically says there is a severe teacher shortage in North Dakota. How should the legislature address this?
Okay, the other thing is to increase funding. Right now, it's 60 to 70%, I believe, goes towards funding public education across the board. We could at least level that off to 75% and increase teacher pay. If we can't pay them a sound wage and secure their future, we're not going to have much success retaining quality educators. Another thing is to protecting their rights. In my opinion, if we can't deal with mass shootings and the AR-15, our educators deserve hazard pay.
Thank you. Megan?
We need to increase funding for public education. The legislature has also no business micromanaging how teachers teach. We need to make sure that our teachers are paid adequately. They are struggling in the classroom. We have a teacher shortage and a teacher retention problem, because the core issue here is that teachers are not supported or funded adequately. And it's time we use some legacy fund dollars, that $8 billion surplus sitting in Bismarck, to help our public education, because public schools lead to vibrant communities, and that's what we want here in Fargo.
Thank you. Next question, we start with you, Megan, and it's going to take me a little while to read this. It all goes to the back of the card.
That's okay.
Workforce safety and insurance. North Dakota's Injured Workers Compensation Program currently has a budget surplus. North Dakota also has the lowest employer-paid work comp premiums in the nation. As a result, the coverage for injured workers is non-existent. Governor Burgum announced today that Art Thompson will be taking over as head of the WSI. Art is, quote, excited to maintain competitive rates for policyholders. As of 2021, WSI had a $1.1 billion surplus, and employers saw a decrease in premiums in 6 of the last 7 years, including an 8% decrease in 2021. Now we get to the question. The question becomes, should the agency turn a profit or take care of injured workers?
The agency needs to take care of injured workers. We have $1.1 billion sitting there. We need to pay those claims. I'm proud to be endorsed by the North Dakota AFL-CIO, and I will fight for workers and working families in Bismarck.
Lillian?
Very good. We have to take care of the people who make this state the place we want to raise our families. When it comes to workforce safety and the protection of our workers, there is no way we can justify winding up with some of our employees going home in body bags. That is a shame. For those who are injured on the job and seek disability, their routes are pretty much cut off. So the legislature needs to drag that out and put it front and center. If we want to promote this legendary state, then we need to treat our people as though they matter.
Thank you. Next questions, start with you, Lillian. North Dakota no longer has a place for people in need to obtain safe abortion. What are your thoughts and plans around that? And what is your overall position on reproductive rights? And what role the legislature will the legislature play in addressing them?
Women have the right to privacy, number one. There's a law that protects your right to privacy when it comes to your health care. Your reproductive rights are health care, and no man, no legislative body should have the authority to tell you what you can or cannot do with that body. I believe that Roe, which had been struck down recently and caused devastation, should be codified in North Dakota state law. And I know that that's a challenge, but I think it's a challenge that is worth having a conversation about, especially the way things have turned out since that unfortunate decision with Dobbs.
Thank you. Megan?
Reproductive freedom is on the ballot this November, and I believe in reproductive freedom. I do not believe that the government should be involved in making women's healthcare choices. In 2014, North Dakotans voted down the personhood measure that would have banned abortion at an early stage. It was voted down by a 2-to-1 margin. There is a silent majority in our state that is pro-choice. And it's time that we send somebody to Bismarck that believes in reproductive freedom. And it's important that we focus on that this next legislative session.
Thank you. Now starting with you, Megan, how will you work on a bipartisan basis to accomplish goals for all North Dakotans?
During my time in Senator Heitkamp's office, constituents came into our office in issues such as veterans affairs, military, immigration. I did all those issue areas, and I was able to work across the aisle for all constituents because they were Senator Heitkamp's constituents. There's enough bickering in Bismarck. We need bipartisan support on legislation that makes sense for North Dakotans, and I promise that I will do that in Bismarck.
Lillian?
Oh, compromise. It would be wonderful if we could walk in with our list of do's and this is what we won't, but that's not the way the life works. So I believe that I need to, would work toward compromise. Communication is key. When we want to convey an idea, we have to be very clear about it and be willing to edit those lists of demands per se. Network building, identifying partners or colleagues who have similar interests or backgrounds, which takes a bit of homework, and that's okay. We've got nothing better to do, and we're in this for the seat. And also, I would solicit testimonies that would work in favor of promoting a position or an idea.
Thank you. Lillian, the next question will start with you. Now you get to listen to a long one. The state of Minnesota has a public disabilities program that financially assists individuals that cannot work due to their medical conditions. People in North Dakota struggle every day to survive both because of their severe medical conditions and their lack of financial resources due to the inability to work. Will you advocate at the state level for additional funds for vulnerable individuals in these situations? And if so, how?
First off, I would have to make sure that they didn't qualify for any federal disability benefits. If they did, if they were able to prevail in a disability determination, that would be one measure. That would be the first. Aside from that, this would essentially, if it fell under or parallel to the workforce safety issues, that would be another component or area of focus to look at for additional funding or to meet that gap. And then with the Department of Health and Human Services, I would have to work with them.
Thank you. Megan?
As the daughter of a mother who has had a disability for over 20 years, I saw how hard work was for her towards the end of her being able to work. We need to make sure that folks with disabilities are able to work and that we support them through that process. Also, the state needs to fund those programs to assist them and make sure that we can address our workforce shortage as well. Because if we don't address all of these underlying issues, we'll never solve our workforce shortage. And I think that's really important that we focus on this next session.
Thank you. Start with you again, Megan. President Biden announced today that he will pardon all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possession, a move that senior administration officials said would affect thousands of Americans. Biden also encouraged governors to do the same at the state level. Would legalizing recreational marijuana be a priority for you at the state capitol?
Absolutely. And I also support the the legalization of marijuana that's currently on the ballot this November. We can't have offenders in our prison system that have low-level offenses such as marijuana possession. It costs the state millions of dollars, and we need to address that, and I support the legalization of marijuana.
Lillian?
I support the expunging of records for misdemeanor possession charges in the state. And I also in favor of the legalization of recreational marijuana. We cannot continue to ignore overdose deaths. And it's hard to make that connection between marijuana and overdose deaths. But if you think about weed on the street and it's laced with something, most often it's fentanyl, and people are dying. We need to take it out of the hands of those who are doing illicit activities in the street and tax the beans out of it. We can be responsible here, but get rid of the shame, and legalization is the way to go.
Thank you. Start with you now, Lillian. As an elected member of the North Dakota House or Senate, whichever you're running for, what is your position on using valuable time for such issues as, well, it just says CRT here. I assume that refers to
Critical race theory.
critical race theory, yes, transgender issues, banning plastic bags from cities, banning cities from mask mandates.
I think it is absolutely preposterous that these issues are the focus of our legislature. Time is better spent focusing on the quality of life for those people who call North Dakota home, those people who come to North Dakota to raise their family, because there's some integrity that is carried with our state. Let's see here. I lost track of your question. I'm so sorry.
It included CRT, transgender
CRT,
issues, banning
yes.
plastic bags, banning plastic bags, or banning cities from banning plastic bags, I believe it means.
Okay.
And banning cities from mask mandates.
Right. As far as the critical race theory, that's a postgraduate course that has never been taught in any elementary or secondary school. But time is best spent addressing real issues that affect the families in North Dakota.
Megan?
Critical race theory is a non-issue, and it is a distraction from the core issue at hand, which is lack of funding for public education. How insulting is it for teachers to hear that a Republican member of the North Dakota House would create a hotline to address a teacher who might or might not be teaching critical race theory? Because it's not happening. It's a non-issue. When it comes to plastic bags, mask mandates, if this is about local control, then let it be about local control. The legislature should not be micromanaging how teachers teach, and it's a non-issue. It's not taught in our public schools. It's a post-secondary discipline, and we need to get to the core issues at hand here.
And now, starting with you, Megan, what are your plans in your campaign, it says, to support student loan forgiveness?
Yeah, so through the Bank of North Dakota, we need to support their interest rates and keep those interest rates down. I visited with the FM Area Association of Realtors, and they mentioned that the average age of a home buyer has gone up by 10 years. And part of the reason that it's gone up is because young people like me have crippling student loan debt. We need to address that. We need, especially through the Bank of North Dakota, in interest-free student loans.
Lillian?
I believe that the Bank of North Dakota could definitely fund no-interest student loans to anyone seeking post-secondary education, be it trade school, community college, anything to further their career or build a life for themselves.
Next question, we start with Lillian. What do you think should be done to prevent gun violence in our state?
For one, the licensure. let me back up. Number one should be abiding by federal law. I've never seen a state refute federal law before our own. And I'm from here. My people are from here. I have roots that don't know boundaries. But when I think of common sense gun legislation, for one, a ban on assault rifles, the AR-15 specifically, because it has caused the most catastrophic damage to families and to society as a whole. But I would definitely urge my legislative colleagues to abide by federal law, and that's specific to firearms.
Megan?
When it comes to gun control, let's focus on something that we actually can accomplish. Number one, red flag laws. We need to make sure we strengthen this and make sure that guns are kept out of the hands of people that are gonna go commit a mass shooting at a school. We need stronger background checks. If you have to wait one more week to get a gun because you need one for deer opener, you weren't planning very far ahead if you're in a pinch. So we need stronger universal background checks, and we need stronger red flag laws.
Now, Megan, we start with you, and someone has a very, you can elaborate, of course, but it's a very straightforward this or that sort of question. Which tax to cut, income or property?
Property taxes. We can lower property taxes by increasing our funding for public education. When public education doesn't need as much funding from property taxes, we can use state dollars to increase funding for public schools. That way, we inadvertently lower property taxes.
Lillian?
Property tax, in essence, with the lowering of property tax rates, that helps your family, that helps the family. But alongside that, I am also mindful of the number of families that we have in our community that do not own homes. They live in apartments, and odds are they will never be able to own a home. But our next door neighbor, Minnesota, has a rent rebate program that we could definitely parallel right here in North Dakota. So it's not only our homeowners that receive a financial burden lifted, but also our renting families.
Start with you now, Lillian. Our Indigenous community members experience homelessness at an alarming rate. What plans do you have to help?
One of the things that I'm doing is I'm a member of the Indigenous Women's Collective, and one of the things that we are looking for is accountability, and also to build partnerships with our existing Indigenous organizations within and across this region, and also to our community partners. So we're looking to build community for real and making it authentic. One of the parallels that we should be all familiar with if we've been in this region for about 7-8 years is what happened on Standing Rock with a water protest and the gathering of nations that came to stand in solidarity. We were also able to put up a school. We had medical facilities. We did a food program. We did cultural education, and that's impromptu. So I do see a great potential for building right here in Fargo.
Megan?
I think one of the biggest things that we can support in North Dakota in terms of affordable housing is the Housing Incentive Fund. It's currently not funded by the legislature, and I think it's crucial that we fund that. I also think that we need to work on those partnerships. It's important for us to work with tribes and make sure that those issues are focused on, and we can bring all stakeholders to the table to find those common sense solutions.
Megan, we start with you. What should be the top budget priorities for North Dakota in the next biennium?
Public education. We have a teacher shortage and retention problem in this state. We need to make sure that our public schools are getting adequate funding and our teachers are adequately paid. The childcare crisis, we need to invest state dollars into making sure that working families can go back to work, but also send their child to daycare where it's accessible and affordable. We also need to work on lowering those property taxes for folks, especially those on fixed incomes and those skyrocketing property taxes.
Lillian?
Top budget priority, for one, childcare, making sure that we can get people working and have folks available to care for the kids. Bolstering education without a sound, fortified at this point education, our children and grandchildren don't stand much of a future. And climate change, we have to invest and we have to act now while we have the chance to do so.
And starting with you, Lillian, what infrastructure improvements should be priorities for the North Dakota legislature that will impact your district's constituents?
Top of the list once again is childcare. If we can, it doesn't look like, it doesn't sound like an infrastructure thing, but if people can't get to work, you can't get to work. But, so right off the bat, it would be childcare funding.
Megan?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. What infrastructure improvements should be priorities for the North Dakota legislature that will impact your district's constituents?
Childcare impacts infrastructure. We need to make sure that our workforce shortage is addressed. We need to make sure that our childcare workers are paid a living wage. When families are able to send their kids back to daycare and go to work, we address that workforce shortage. We also then support our businesses thriving because they have enough adequate staff.
I have got one more question, unless somebody brings one up while these are being answered. So this will be our last question unless somebody brings me another one, and then we'll go to closing statements. And this was actually the 16th question we've gotten to tonight. Y'all talk fast. I'm from Missouri. Y'all talk too fast. What do you think is the most neglected issue facing North Dakotans? What would you do to solve this issue?
I sound like a broken record. Public education. We need to fund our public schools. Public schools lead to vibrant communities. Our teachers are educating our future generations. We need to make sure that our public schools are funded and not giving tax dollars for private school vouchers. And it's important that the legislature focuses on this so that we can have a community that is continuing to thrive.
Lillian?
Education, public education. We need to bolster and increase and enhance our public education, especially when it comes to STEM fields and STEM careers, because that's where we are and that's where the future is.
So this concludes the question and answer portion. I want to thank all the candidates and the audience, both here in person and those of you watching at home, and informing yourselves before you vote. And if you'd like to continue learning more about your candidates, the League has partnered with Forum Communications to present vote411.org. Through this website, you can is a voter's guide that will let you just simply enter in your address, and will give you the list of candidates who will be on your ballot, the two explanations of the two initiated measures in North Dakota, and for all the candidates who have answered the questions submitted for them through Vote 411, you can also get additional information about your candidates. So please take a look at that either through the forum or the League Facebook page, or simply go to vote411.org. And so we will have our closing remarks, and I'm going to turn the timer off for this and let you all just talk as long as you want, because we're kind of finishing a little early. We'll start, Megan, you started with the opening statements, so we'll let Lillian get the last word in. So we'll start with you tonight on the closing statement.
All right.
Megan, we'll start with you, so Lillian gets the last word.
So here's what's on the ballot this November. We've got reproductive freedom, funding for public education, lowering our property taxes, making sure we address this childcare shortage in our state and our crisis that's going on. We have $8 billion sitting in Bismarck. Some people call it the Legacy Fund, others call it the Rainy Day Fund, and I'll tell you what, it's raining. We need to invest these dollars into our state so that we can continue to be a leader, and it's time we elect politicians to Bismarck that are going to stand up for reproductive freedom, support public education, make sure we lower property taxes, and I am that candidate that believes all of those things, and I will always fight for working families in North Dakota, and I hope to get your vote on November 8th. Thanks for having us.
Lillian.
I'm thankful for this opportunity to speak to you tonight and to answer the questions that were posed. Thank you for the time that you took in crafting those, and I appreciate your participation here. I really look forward to getting to Bismarck. I was born and raised there, and I always said that I could go back to Bismarck temporarily in elected office, and here's an opportunity to get back home. I sure would appreciate it. I'm looking forward to getting to work, though, and in addition to property tax relief, again, there's got to be a parallel. I believe in equity, I believe in justice, and I believe that we can easily do a renter's rebate. I believe that we need to bolster education, and that legacy fund needs to earn its name. I think it's about time that it proves its weight. And another thing that we hadn't been able to contact or to touch on this evening is access to affordable health care. That has to be a priority, and it has to be something that we can make sure that our gig workers and independent contractors and entrepreneurs also have an ability to get their businesses covered and their employees. I look forward to working on behalf of everyone in District 41. Party doesn't matter. We're all the same in the end. I appreciate your time, and I would certainly appreciate your vote. Go ahead and look me up on Facebook, Lillian4ND. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the candidates for being candidates and participating in our democracy in that way. And thank you to all of you who are here and being participants as well, and now go out and be the best kind of participants, which are voters. We will take a break here and get set up for our next forum for District 44. Thank you.
Yup.
Good evening. Thank you to all the candidates for joining our candidate forums tonight. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters. My name is Bailey Stickney, and I will be your moderator for the evening. This forum is being streamed live and is also recorded for playback on the City of Fargo's government PEG TV, PEG TV channel, TV Fargo 56. This recording will also be posted on the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley Facebook page. The League of Women Voters, if you haven't heard of us, is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. If you would like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or find us on Facebook. This is important. This is some legal stuff we have to read. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are most important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not necessarily those of the League of Women Voters. The League posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. We want to thank the City of Fargo for providing this beautiful space and really great technical assistance to this evening's event. Before I begin, I'd like to review the rules and procedures. We do have questions submitted in advance by our public audience attending here. We do screen these questions for clarity, legibility, and we try not to double up on questions, so we may not read everyone's question verbatim. We do try our very best to get them all read. Also, time constraints are real. Our candidates participating tonight are from District 44. Each candidate will have 1 minute for their opening remarks. Each will then be allowed 1 minute to respond to each question. At the conclusion of our question and answer period, candidates will be given another 1 minute for their closing remarks. A timer back there will indicate how much time is remaining, and you'll hear a buzzing, beeping when your time has expired. You can finish your thought, although it is tough with the beeping happening, but you don't have to immediately stop speaking. We'll begin opening statements. Well, actually, I have a statement from a candidate that couldn't make it. And here it is. So, candidate Gwen Attenberg says, "Good evening to my constituents. I'm sorry I couldn't make the debate. I hope everyone has a good evening, and I wish my fellow candidates the best. If elected, I promise to represent District 44 as faithfully as possible. I will do what I can to listen to the public and craft legislation for the people, by the people. I will work as hard as I can to lobby on behalf of the district and do what I can to advance their interests. I promise to do what I can to keep taxes as low as possible while maintaining the government services. I know that for many, things such as the labor shortage in healthcare, daycare, rising costs of living, and special assessments locally, there are a lot of issues that need attention. If elected, you have my word, I will do what I can to address these issues. I generally dislike long political speeches, so I will keep this brief and hope that everything goes well in my absence. And I'm going to run this telephone back to its owner. I'll be right back. All right, we can get started here with opening remarks. I'm just going to go in line here, and we'll start with you, Bjorn. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sure. Hi, my name is Bjorn Altenberg. I'm running for District 44 on the Republicans. I'm happy to see the people here tonight, and hopefully the people watching this recording will at least consider what I have to say here tonight. I also do not like long political speeches, so with that, I will end my opening remarks.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I'm Senator Merrill Pepcorn, also, of course, from District 44. Brief bio, I was born in western North Dakota, Stanley, North Dakota, home of the Whirlawhip. If you haven't been out there to have one, please do that. Moved to Fargo to start fourth grade and attended all the way through public school, all the way through high school, beginning at Central and graduating from North High. Earned a college degree from Concordia College. As a parent, I've always been involved in school organizations, from athletic organizations and academic organizations, and I've always been involved in that, and of course then church leadership organizations. And I really got involved in what I would say my start in politics was when I got involved with the Horace Mann Area Neighborhood Association when there was a movement to close Horace Mann School. That kind of fired me up a little bit, and I've been sticking around politics ever since. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua.
Hello, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. It's unfortunate this is actually the only public forum that we have available to speak to voters, so it's great to be here with you all. I've had the privilege of representing District 44 here in North Fargo since 2012. I was first elected that year and have served ever since in many of the committees before serving in leadership. I was elected by my caucus members to be the House Minority Leader in 2019. And little did those of us that were elected to leadership that year know that we would go into a global pandemic. So the last several years, I've been working with the governor's office, along with the Republican and Democratic leaders of each caucus, to make sure that we're addressing the needs of North Dakotans. Certainly, there's a lot of opportunities that we had, and some missed opportunities as well. So I look forward to being reelected by our voters to continue the hard work in Bismarck to make sure that we're addressing issues such as childcare, quality public education, and addressing the needs of our seniors.
Thank you. Carla.
Thank you to the League for hosting us. Thanks for everyone for being here or for watching online. My name is Carla Rose Hansen. I was first elected to the North Dakota House in 2016. And I've really worked hard to make my priorities a reflection of the district's priorities. And what I've heard from people from knocking thousands of doors is that we really, as a state, need to work on the childcare crisis. We need to invest in education. We need to make prescription drugs more affordable. And we need to provide some property tax relief. What we shouldn't do as a state, according to the people I hear from, is have the government involved in private healthcare decisions or engage in the culture wars, if you will. So I've represented these concerns over the years by championing different efforts and also being strongly engaged with the district as well, communicating with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you, everyone, for your opening remarks. We will dive right into the question and answer portion. I always like to start this out with a easy one. Please tell us the experience you have that qualifies you for this position. And we'll start with Merrill. Yes,
Okay,
thank
very
you.
good. Kind of leaning in. You saw me leaning, didn't you? Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, as I mentioned, I had never been involved in partisan politics until, well, I snooped around, I guess, a little bit, I suppose you could say, 2010, 2012, and found a home in the Democratic Nonpartisan League Party, where I found there was the party that really I was aligned with the values of service to people. I'm encouraged to run because I connect with my neighbors, my friends. My strongest quality is the quality of the people that I associate with, whether it be in my neighborhood association, my neighbors, my various work experience that I've had, church people. So I don't have to go in with my own personal, well, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to achieve. I listen to the people and have made some nice, significant accomplishments, I think, in the first few years. We'll touch on them as time goes by.
Thank you. Joshua?
Thank you for the question. I believe my experience is the last 10 years that I've served in office. There's a conversation right now about term limits that the voters will have a decision on. But being a citizen part-time legislature, it is challenging to understand the entire concept of a lot of the policy issues that we address. And so I feel I finally have a good grasp of that, especially as we look at the appropriations process in the work that I've done over the last 2 years on different budget committees. I want to continue the work of making sure that we're holding the majority party accountable. There is a lot going on in our state, and we have a lot of opportunities, especially when you look at, we're going to have approximately $850 million in surplus this next session that we can reinvest back in North Dakota. That's how we're going to be able to address things like the childcare shortage, making sure that we're developing skilled workforce that we're recruiting and we're retaining, and an opportunity to look at reducing property taxes through supporting of public education, social services, and other local needs at the county and city level.
Thank you. Carla?
Yes, the experiences that I would bring to this role are really what I've demonstrated over the last 6 years, and that really revolves around collaboration and communication. So collaboration is really important for any lawmaker. You have to build a bipartisan coalition to get bills passed, to engage a lot of different stakeholders, and I've done that on issues related to veterans, care for people with diabetes, and also criminal justice reform. Another issue is communication. I am a professional communicator in my day job, if you will, and I think it's very important that lawmakers both listen to their constituents, which we do through regular forums in our neighborhood, and then communicate back to the constituents on what's happening during the legislative session. It's a fast-moving session, a lot happens, and it's hard to keep track of that. So we send regular updates to people who subscribe, as well as updates on social media, so that they know what's going on in the legislature.
Thank you. Our next question. I'm so sorry.
That's okay when you start with the middle person.
Please,
Yeah.
please, Bjorn.
Oh, okay.
What experience do you have that qualifies you for this position?
I think in general, I've been participating in partisan politics since I was, I think, like 10 years old. I've generally been around the Republican Party for a very long time. If you do not know, my grandmother ran for Congress in '84, I want to say. And she's always been an influence. She's even served on like the gambling council for years. So being involved in state politics has always been just kind of in the background there. And generally, I think I have a good, strong academic background in things like geographic information systems, natural resource management. When it comes to a state that's heavily reliant on its natural resources, I think I can bring some interesting skill sets to the table when analyzing things and even approaching data-driven solutions for this state. I think I wholeheartedly believe that ultimately public decisions should be crafted between stakeholders and professionals, and using the best systems possible available to us is ultimately what drives the best decisions.
Thank you. And thank you for extending your grace to me in my mistake. Our next question, and we'll start with Joshua for this one. Finding adequate childcare is difficult in North Dakota. How do you think the legislature should address this?
Well, I think first and foremost, the legislature should have addressed this well over 10 years ago. There have been many policy proposals brought forward to address not only the spots and the availability of childcare, but also making sure that we are professionalizing the workforce and providing the needs of those that provide care and quality care for our children. But it is good now that that everyone is talking about this, whether it's the local chambers of commerce, whether it's various industries, whether it's stakeholders, and even the proposal from the governor's office a few months ago. I support the general framework of the governor's proposal, and what we really need to do is a multi-pronged approach. And what I've really encouraged my legislative colleagues for us to do is we do a really good job when it comes to roads and bridges. We need to treat childcare as an infrastructure plan and treat it like we did the prairie dog bill several years ago. This needs to be an all-the-above policy where we look at all the opportunities that we have to address, because other states are already doing it. So when we look at wanting to recruit and retain families and people who want to start and raise their families here, it needs to be an all-the-above initiative.
Thank you so much. Carla?
Yes, the child care crisis is real in North Dakota. We hear from families every single day about how frustrating it is that their waits to get into a child care facility is months and months long. And then if they do get a spot, the cost for child care is often equal to or greater than their mortgage or tuition payments. As the previous speaker said, we need a multi-pronged approach to dealing with this crisis. We can do things on the provider side to stabilize the wages and the workforce within the child care center, and we can craft solutions for the family side, making it more affordable. The bottom line is that this is really a workforce issue at this point. You can't go to work if you don't have a safe place for your child to go. So I think we definitely need to look at the wages on the child care side, as well as before school care and after school care. Those are two components that weren't included in some of the recent proposals introduced.
Thank you. Bjorn.
As somebody with two under two, this is a deeply personal issue. I've been personally affected by this multiple occasions. I've had to see it firsthand. I've sat in parents group and watched people, cry because they can't get out of the situation. So it's ultimately, I've talked to many childcare providers. I've sat with many parents groups and talked about this issue endlessly. It's one of the major reasons I'm running. I think ultimately some of the things I've heard over and over again is, number one is going to be, we need to talk about the low wages. We also need to talk about, in particular, childcare, for years, professional, and I'll try to keep this as short as possible. So feel free to talk to me about this any other time, and I can go for hours, is professional recognition of early childhood education. A lot of them feel like they have been undervalued, and in particular, our childcare workers feel extremely undervalued, and the lack of certifications and certificates for them make them feel like the labor market isn't really fair to them because they can be replaced fairly easily.
Thank you. Meryl.
We need to understand also that this childcare crisis it's really something new in the history. It's kind of a sea change. It wasn't that long ago when everybody had babysitters, and it's different now. And women should be allowed to and encouraged to and are involved in the workplace. And that is called for a change in childcare, but it doesn't happen overnight. So we need to keep plugging away at it with some of these ideas that we've heard so far. And especially when it comes to wages, I think Bjorn was exactly right in that our workers have been undervalued. And we'll just keep going at it and trying to educate people that it is important. It is important to the workforce and to recruiting and retaining that workforce. I have a son in Minnesota who benefits from some child care programs from his employer and also generous parental leave, and that's important as well.
Thank you. And Carla, we'll start the next question with you. And one of our question submitters would like to know, where will you reside if you're elected to the Senate? Or
the House.
the House?
If I might clarify the question, where will I reside while I live in Bismarck? That must mean, must be what it means. Well, I'll continue to live, my permanent address, of course, will be in District 44. I live on 5th Street and have lived in a beautiful 1929 home for the last 20 years. When I'm in Bismarck, I usually will rent a snowbird's home, and I enjoy being able to have the comforts of home while I'm serving in the legislative session, because it's often quite intense. I hope that answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Bjorn?
I guess I hope I'm understanding. This is kind of a, so when it comes down to living in the legislature or getting out there for the Senate, I live in the district and I will continue to live in the district out in Bismarck. Depending on the situation and a few other situations, there might be some friends I might stay with or possibly stay at a family house. And I think that's the living arrangements I would have out there. So.
Thank you. Meryl?
Of course, we all need to retain our permanent address here in North Fargo, and none of us live in downtown yet, but you never know what might happen. But living within the district. But now, an interesting thing arose today, and Josh was in our Legislative Management Committee, and renters get reimbursed $1,800 a month per legislator that they rent to. And so the idea now is, well, some of them can rent to 2 renters and they get $3,600. If they rent to 3 people in a 3-bedroom home, they get, what's that, $5,400? How's my math doing? And there is an opportunity to lower the cost, a little moderate improvement in state spending to lower the rate for the second renter and the third renter. And that's a small example of some place where we can make some improvements and spend a little bit less money by reimbursing those folks. But I've rented a private home for the past sessions that I've been there and enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. Joshua?
Thank you. As has been previously stated by other candidates, I would, of course, keep my home over on the 6th Avenue and 1st Street. And when I'm in Bismarck, I prefer to stay in a hotel for the easy coming and going and to make sure I get home in time.
Thank you. We have our next question. We'll start with Bjorn. Do you support charitable gaming in North Dakota?
Yes, I'm a strong supporter of charitable gaming. I think, I've had endless conversations with my grandmother about this in the past. I know there's been controversies in particular with the poll tabs and various other things, but I feel like I do not have enough time within a minute or even like 2 hours to really explain the full extent of that. Yes, I support charitable gaming. I support it generally as it is right now in North Dakota.
Thank you. Yeah.
Much as I don't really energetically and enthusiastically embrace it, it's here. And I wish that our charities were not reliant on gambling. However, and that said, I did vote against an expansion of gaming from your phone, no matter where you can be. I think that has to be looked at again. I'm sure it'll be back at the last session. I'm sure that'll be back again. And there's always head knocking between the tribes and the charities. And somehow there always is an agreement at the end of the session where we come up with something that they both can live with. Now, gaming on Indian tribes is a little, tribal land is a little different because they are independent nations in that respect. So it's complicated, but it's also a very learning experience. It's here. I work to make it fair for all involved.
Thank you. Joshua?
Yes, I generally support charitable gaming. It is a revenue source for our charities, and due to the fact that there's a lot of services not provided by our state, or our state depends on nonprofits to provide those services, it is one of the main revenue sources for a number of organizations, whether it's social service organizations, organizations doing things in arts and culture, organizations that are helping keep people in homes. So until we have a better response from the state to make sure we're providing those services and we're not depending on the nonprofit sector to provide it as an area of last resort, I'll continue to support charitable gaming.
Thank you. Carla?
Yes, thank you for the question. I do support charitable gaming. As Josh mentioned, they do provide an important revenue source for many nonprofits, education, veterans organizations, and on and on. I serve on the Lottery Commission as well. I'm not a gambler myself. I have never bought any kind of ticket of any type, but it's not my scene. But I definitely support some of the efforts in lieu of other types of financial support for these organizations. One thing with charitable gambling that is on people's radar is the increase, the dramatic increase of the electronic pull tabs. And so there is some concern related to that and the impact that it has on different areas of our economy and the tribal gambling efforts. And so it's just one thing that will probably be a discussion point in the upcoming legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Merrill. Do you support a carbon tax on emissions in North Dakota? Or do you have any other ideas?
Well, of course, thank you. Everybody is concerned about it because the public wants a clean environment. There are a lot of people that are concerned about the future. And can we keep pumping pollutants into the air? Now, over time, improvements have been made at our coal plants. And I do approve of a carbon tax, but we have to either increase the efficiency of burning it. And of course, there's coal, carbon storage now that is extremely popular, that's costing a lot of money, and I don't think the whole story has been told on that either. It's still up in the air. I'm a little leery of that as well. My main concern about coal is that if we keep producing coal-fired energy and our neighbors in Minnesota don't want it, what are we going to do with all that excess?
Joshua?
To be honest, I'm not as familiar with carbon taxation, so it's not something I'm even going to try to answer. But what I am an advocate for is making sure that we're using responsible development of our natural resources in our state. We are blessed to have an all-the-above energy opportunities, whether it's fossil fuels and doing that more responsibly, or even the development of renewable energy throughout the state. And you know, the announcement recently that North Dakota gets to headquarter the spearheading of a hydrogen hub within our region is a great opportunity for us to find alternative ways to make sure that we're providing heat and energy and resources so that we can continue to develop and take care of our planet at the same time. The unfortunate part is that the legislature continues to chip away at local control. I know in the previous panel that was up before us, there was talk about the fact that the legislature has said that the city of Fargo cannot have a ban on plastic bags. Well, if the city of Fargo or Cass County or any other entity wants to make a decision that's best for their community, they should have that opportunity.
Thank you. Carla?
Thank you. Likewise, I would need to do some more research on a carbon tax. I'm always, I'm always open to learning more about things, learning about the pros and cons from the different stakeholders. I do think that there needs to be more investments in technology for storage for some of the renewable energies. So I think North Dakota with the EERC in Grand Forks could certainly be a leader in helping North Dakota become a leader in clean energy and being a good steward of our earth. I also am concerned with some of the attacks from some of my colleagues on the attacks on the wind energy development in North Dakota. We do see a strong demand for renewable energies from some of our neighboring states who purchase our energy. So we certainly want to continue with the all of the above energy approach and not decrease our production of wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Bjorn?
Ultimately, what I've seen with these things is typically between cap and trade and all the various other things, you're going to see that ultimately lobbyist groups and various others will get in there, or ultimately it'll be bent to political whims in one way or another. So no, I generally do not support carbon emission taxes in general. Also, it incentivizes companies to hide their emissions. It also incentivizes people to do the things. Inevitably, as if you're interested in environmentalism or even promoting environmentalism, it is generally a very bad idea to try and go after companies with direct taxes on a specific source of, point pollution. And we've seen this over and over again. I could talk about case studies till I'm blue in the face about this, but I'll keep it short and I'll just say that no, I do not support any kind of carbon tax in North Dakota, generally speaking.
Thank you. We will start our next question with Joshua. How can the legislature help address the issue of homelessness in North Dakota?
Well, I think first and foremost that the state of North Dakota could pass a policy that says that we're a housing first state. Many states and jurisdictions have done this, where it's a matter of we make sure that we provide housing first, that regardless of someone's background, regardless of the addictions they have or don't have, their health status, that we're going to make sure that they have housing. We have a great model here in Cass County and in Fargo with the Gladys Ray Shelter, with, I'm forgetting what the apartment unit is just over across downtown here, but it allows people a place to stay, to get the treatment and wraparound services that they need, and we can practice that model throughout the state. So more resources to addressing not only homelessness, but also preventing it. We saw through the pandemic with the federal resources we received that we were able to keep people housed. Now, there's certainly some things that need to be worked out to the balance of landlord rights and tenant rights, but when we kept people housed, we kept them healthy and we kept them safe, and that ended up being a great model for us to look at how we can use some of our state resources.
Thank you. Carla?
Yes, homelessness is a great concern to many residents in District 44. District 44 going forward is going to include downtown, and we hear this concern from many people in our neighborhoods. As was mentioned, a housing first strategy has to be the key to any strategy related to helping people who are experiencing homelessness. You can't just tell people to go get a job or to, I don't want to see you, because you're not addressing the barriers to what they need to be successful. We know that some of the barriers are not just obviously shelter, but chronic physical health conditions, also addiction and mental health are often factors, and transportation is also a major factor for people experiencing homelessness. And so the state can obviously continue to do more services in all those different areas to address the nearly 1,000 people who are homeless every night here in Fargo.
Thank you. Bjorn.
I know homelessness is on everybody's mind, in particular when it comes to the more visible elements of it, in particular those on the streets in general. I think ultimately, as a state level, I would want a lot more information and data. Like I said, I like data-driven solutions, and I've looked into this. So I know, like in particular with homelessness, there are different levels and varieties and stuff. There are like people living in their vans and people living on the street, and how we approach these things. We need different kinds of shelters. Ultimately, I think the state cooperating with cities, because I imagine what we'd see, and typically what we see, there's a huge divide between the rural homeless and the urban homeless, and how those two get along, or not get along, how they live and how we need to address those issues. So I would say in general, I'm generally favorable for at least doing something or keeping the current programs in place, but probably working more closely with city and county governments to try and address the issues locally as much as possible.
Thank you. Meryl.
I believe a lot of homelessness and other issues related to that are due to drug addiction and mental illness. And we have to keep on trying. Our mission in life is to take care of our neighbors. We have to take care of ourselves, our families, and our neighbors, and then reach out and and show the love. And that means increasing services, identifying and increasing services for treatment of alcoholism and drug addiction, and just not giving up. And also diagnosis of mental health and what's going to help with that. One small little thing there that I'm related with is helping Habitat for Humanity kind of smooth the path to building more homes for families who need it. So that's something I'm looking forward to working on in this next session.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with Carla. There is a severe teacher shortage in North Dakota, and how can you help address this?
Thank you. Yes, I hear about the teacher shortage from the many educators who live in District 44. They're greatly concerned with it. So I think we can address the teacher retention issue a number of ways. First of all is compensation. The state provides the majority of funding for our K through 12 system, and we can provide a good amount increase to that to help keep up with inflation and to make that a competitive competitive with private jobs so that they don't leave the area. Time is another factor that teachers have to consider. They're being asked to do a lot of new tasks in addition to working with students. A third area that we should not do is engage in the culture wars related to like critical race theory or hiring a team of investigators in the Attorney General's office to investigate teachers suspected of teaching something they're not supposed to. That will not help teacher retention. Thank you.
Thank you. Bjorn.
I think the teaching crisis has been on many people's minds. It's been in the news for years now. Ultimately, I think resolving it in the cities is going to be very different. So with our own district, ultimately solving it, yeah, there's only so much we can do at the state legislature versus what the cities can do. But in particular, ensuring that they have the adequate tools and resources they need to ensure that teachers have a quality of life in the classroom, that they can function in their jobs. And want to actually be in these positions, trying to make things like our local elementary schools and our local middle schools and our local high schools as attractive to professionals as possible is very important for attracting talent, at least That's what I've seen in the data from the various articles and organizations I've read. And I could go on for a lot longer too, but I think in general, doing what we can do to support teachers, in particular to attract them to North Dakota, is paramount in fixing the issue.
Thank you. Merrill?
Teachers and nurses are some of my favorite people that have influenced my life. Teachers are the backbone of our communities. Right now, they have to dig into their own pockets for supplies. They have to rely on parents and community groups such as our Horace Mann Area Neighborhood Association to provide snacks. There's a lot of stress and tension on teachers. And right now, in the legislature, there's a movement to change the retirement system and making it less certain for retiring teachers and adding more uncertainty to that. So we're fighting against that. In the meantime, there are those wages too. We have a lot of, as Carla mentioned, NDSU staff and faculty in our district. We hear from them all the time that we're losing great qualified teachers because of, well, some of the restraints our legislature tries to put on them, in addition to lower salaries compared to similar institutions across the country.
Thank you. Joshua?
Thank you. I agree with most of what's already been said. You know, we need to look at the impact of salaries and recruiting and retaining teachers, making sure that we as legislators are staying out of the classroom from a standpoint of dictating what's being taught and what's not being taught. That's a local school board decision, and if people want to have that conversation, they should visit with their school board. North Dakota has done a great job in the fact of starting a pilot program, I believe it was either 2 or 4 years ago, the community school model, working with our regional education associations. And I think that's a model that's proving to do well, because what it does is it takes the burden off of teachers to provide social services to their students and their families. The community school models could be one that we continue to invest in that allows us to put professionals or people who are interested in helping provide wraparound services in our schools and throughout our school district, so that families have access to resources, so that kids can work on their development and inside and outside of the classroom, but also looking at how do we support paraprofessionals as a professional career and not just an ancillary position within the school.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Bjorn. North Dakota no longer has a place for people in need to obtain safe abortions. What are your thoughts and plans around this?
I think generally I would like a lot more information on the subject. I feel like I am not particularly the most knowledgeable person, nor am I a woman on the subject. So honestly, I think that's the most I would have to say on it.
Thank you. Merrill?
Generally speaking, I have to agree with the women I know in my life that they would prefer to have these decisions left to them, themselves, their families, their doctors. And I don't think the legislature reflects the mood of or the thoughts of the general population on many issues, including the abortion issue. So like it's been said, we have to try to retain that right to abortion in the hands of women.
Thank you. Joshua?
I firmly believe that women should be able to make the decisions about their body, their bodily autonomy with their doctor and any other person they decide to bring in that conversation. I don't think any woman or any individual seeking health care asks the legislature for what they should do next in those decisions. But beyond the access to abortion in North Dakota, I think the state can do a better job of making sure that we're supporting families, that once children are born or as families are deciding to have children, and we can do that in a variety of ways. It's extremely expensive for families to adopt kids, and we have hundreds, if not thousands of kids throughout the state that are looking for good quality homes. We could support that, whether it's help with direct costs, or other creative ways of visiting with people who work in the adoption and foster community. I think the other part that we can do a better job of is making sure that we provide paid family leave. We work with our workforce and our employers to make sure that if families are starting, that there is leave available to the mother and the father, whether they're adopting or having naturally born children.
Thank you. Carla?
Yes, thank you. North Dakotans do not want the government involved in their private healthcare decisions, and that's why I support safe and legal abortion. I support affordable access to contraception, and I support people's right to build their families using IVF. When Roe was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this year, Justice Thomas wrote a concurring opinion that invited far-right legislatures like ours to challenge other rights that are based in privacy, like the right to contraception and same-sex marriage as well. And I am afraid that some of my colleagues might bring forward some bills that threaten these very rights that we have related to contraception, IVF, and really go beyond North Dakota's extreme trigger ban, which will be dangerous for women once it goes into effect. But I will stand against such extreme proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. We have reached the end of our question and answer portion of this forum. So we are going to move into closing remarks. Before we hear one last thing from you guys, I would like to thank everyone that has been speaking tonight, all of our attendees, and everyone listening at home. This is an excellent way for people to become educated about the folks that they're voting for. Really, truly thank you from the League and myself personally. Again, we've partnered with Forum Communications to present vote411.org. This is a really great tool that candidates can fill out a profile and voters can read about what you have to offer. Again, candidates will be available after the forum, so if anyone has additional questions, I'm sure they would like to talk to you. With that, we'll begin with our closing remarks, and my note card says we'll start with you, Merrill.
Thank you very much again to the League for providing this opportunity for us. In the North Dakota Senate, there are 40 Republicans and 7 Democratic nonpartisan leaguers. That imbalance is unhealthy for the governance of North Dakota. So with that in mind, I encourage you and that our reelection of this team from North Fargo, District 44, is important. Also, what I would label as not conservatives, I don't know, liberal and conservative seem to be outdated terms, what I would call extremists who are more interested in legislating social norms rather than policy affecting the state there are going to be more of them. And so we need to be there for balance. I do want to take just a moment to thank Mr. Altenberg for being here and being a good candidate and participating in this forum tonight as well. So again, thanks a lot, and glad to be here.
Thank you. Joshua.
Yes, thanks again to the League for hosting tonight, and thanks for those that are attending. I'm sure many of us will hear from people when they get to watch the video online or on community access as this plays out between now and the election. I'm proud of our team's track record of engaging with our district. We are proud to continue to try to keep people up to date of what's going on in Bismarck, hosting forums throughout the session and even when we're not in session, because we really realize that we might have some answers, but we really get the best answers from the people we represent. There's nothing more empowering to me than when I knock on the door of one of our north side neighbors and they tell me they're a child care worker and can be a resource for me as we talk about the child care crisis, or a teacher at one of our local schools can help me better understand what is and isn't happening in the classroom. And that's where I found the value of being a legislator, is to listen. And I will continue to listen to the voters of North Fargo and downtown Fargo and making sure that we're addressing the issues important to them and making sure we stand up against the extremism that's continuing to grow in Bismarck that is nothing more than a distraction when we have an opportunity to do so many great things.
Thank you. Carla.
Thank you again to the League for hosting this. Thanks for everyone for being here. I'm asking my neighbors to re-elect me and send me back to Bismarck simply because there's more work to do to move North Dakota forward. As we've talked about tonight, all the important issues that we've heard about from our neighbors, we need to address the child care crisis so that people can go to work. We need to invest in education and especially to make sure we're retaining the high quality teachers that we want to have at K through 12, as well as in our higher education system. We also have to continue to improve healthcare. We didn't talk about healthcare very much tonight, but we absolutely in North Dakota need to expand our behavioral health services, which include mental health and addiction treatment across the state. And we need to get a handle on the expensive prescription drug prices that people pay. And we don't need to waste time on culture wars. So with that, thank you again to the forum, and I'd appreciate your vote in November. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Bjorn.
Thanks for everybody being here tonight. Of course, thanks to League of Women Voters. I've even actually sat over there and done timing in the past with my hands. I have distant memories of sitting there with Lois and Carol and stuff doing that. So I thank you guys very much. I know how much work that can be. I'd also like to thank everyone else for showing up tonight. You're right, this is like one of the only public forums we have left. Maybe we should talk sometime and put something on. I don't know. But with that, that's all I have to say.
My goodness. Thank you, candidates. Again, thank you, everyone. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back for another round of this in 15 minutes. Thanks so much.
Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. Make sure we start this timely so we can all get out and go enjoy the rest of our evening. Is that too loud? No. Okay. I feel like there should be some game show music happening right now. Okay, good evening, and thank you to all of the candidates for joining us at the candidate forums hosted by the League of Women Voters. My name is Katie, and I will be your moderator for the forum. This forum is being streamed live and also recorded for playback on the City of Fargo government's PEG TV channel, TV Fargo 56. This recording will also be posted to the League of Women Voter Red River Valley Facebook page. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. The League encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you would like to learn about the League, please visit our website or find us on Facebook. The League of Women Voters sponsors candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates and not of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting, and excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan or political purposes. We want to thank the City of Fargo for providing the space and technical assistance for this evening's event. Before we begin, I would like to review the rules and procedures. Questions have been submitted in advance by the public on index cards for this event. Questions may have been screened for clarity or combined with similar questions. All candidates will be given an opportunity to address each question. Our candidates participating tonight are from District 10. Each candidate will have 1 minute for their opening remarks. Each will then be allowed 1 minute to respond to each question. At the conclusion of the Q&A period, candidates will be given another minute for their closing remarks. A timer, located sort of behind me, will indicate how much time is remaining and will indicate when your time is done. When you hear the buzzer, that means your time has expired. Please complete your sentence or thought so that we may move on to the next candidate or question. We will begin with opening statements with Ryan and proceed down the line in turn.
Good evening, and thank you for the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My name is Ryan Braunberger, and I am running for District 10 State Senate. I'm a lifelong Fargo resident, and I have seen Fargo grow over the years. There has been that growth has created many opportunities for several individuals. However, it has left many behind. Today in our area, we have people that are struggling to find childcare. We have individuals that are struggling to pay their rent, and then we have businesses that are closing because they can't find workers. We can solve those issues by supporting our childcare workers and expanding early education and after-school programs. We can also, North Dakota has the resources available to be able to do all of this, and I want to make sure that we get to the state senate to help all these individuals.
Thank you. And Curtis.
Well, thank you to the League for sponsoring this event for us candidates and for the voters. In my background, the most important thing I could mention is that I served previously in the state Senate from 2006 to 2012, serving as vice chairman of the Judiciary Committee and also on the on the Political Subdivisions Committee. I am a now retired lifelong farmer, rancher, construction business owner, national political consultant. I've traveled over the country doing that. And the reason that this experience, not only in the Senate previously, but in business, the reason it's important is because there are no sitting state legislators living in this district. So it's a brand new district, and it would be good for the district to send people to Bismarck who have experience. My running mate, Steve Swantek, and I bring 14 years of prior legislative experience and a lifetime of experience in business to bring to bear on behalf of this brand new district.
Thank you. And Hamida.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the leagues to host this event. My name is Hamida Dakane, and I am running for North Dakota House in District 10. Tonight, I would like to talk about the challenges our neighbors in District 10 are facing that they have shared with me when I was at their door visiting with them throughout the campaign. Childcare is expensive and unavailable to many families, and it is very hard for people not to provide for themselves if they cannot work. Parents that I've talked to are talking about how they support our education system and how they want to be supportive to the teachers and the staffs that provide the education to our children. Women are terrified of how things are going in North Dakota with the reproductive right. I want to represent all those people in Bismarck and being a voice and being a representative.
Thank you, Hamida. Damien.
Hello. Thank you to the League for hosting us again tonight. And I'm Damien Riddle. Lived in North Dakota most of my life, and I'm running because we have work to do. We have needs in our district, and there are things that talking to people we need to get taken care of. We need childcare available. We need to make sure our education is funded. We need to make sure people can afford their housing, whatever that situation is, be it property taxes, being able to buy a house, being able to even rent a house. So that's one of the main issues. Also, we need to protect our reproductive freedoms. That is key. And on top of it, we need to not screw over our veterans and privatize the VA. That needs to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Swantek, and I'm a candidate for the North Dakota House from District 10. Thank you to the League for having this opportunity to visit, and also to my fellow 4 other candidates that are running. I think this is not an easy task to do, and so I applaud everybody that we have a good constructive dialogue tonight as well. I'm running for a number of issues, mental health, addiction and services, improving that, enhancing that, supporting our schools, really working on workforce development as well as for childcare areas. And I look forward to the discussion and digging in deeper regarding all of those areas. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Curtis, you are first on my list for questions. So what experience do you have that qualifies you for this position? Or, yes, that qualifies you for this position?
Well, I covered several of those in my opening statement. My prior service in the Senate from 2006 to 2012, and also my lifetime of experience in business. And again, the legislature is a very challenging arena. And if you have prior experience in business and in the legislature, that is really something that gives you a head start. That means that doesn't mean I know everything, but it means I can hit the ground running on day one. And I think that's an important thing for a brand new district where we have no sitting state legislators living here. I also have been a community leader back in my former area back home. I've been a church council president. I've been president of my local Icelandic association, and that's given me a lot of experience in leadership. I've been on the county job development authority and traveled the country nationally doing national political work. So.
Thank you, Curtis. Now, Hamida.
Well, I'll say my educational background. I have a good education, all thanks to North Dakota. I went to NDSU, graduated from there. I went to University of Mary with my master's in public administration. And in between, I've done a lot of work locally in our community. I have formed a couple organizations that work and provide service to our community. I've worked with elected people. I've worked with business leaders. I've worked with religious leaders, and I think my strongest thing I will say is communication and bringing people together. And I am a good listener. I listen to people at their doors, and I will carry that. And I think that is what gives me a good chance.
Thank you, Hamida. Damien?
Well, I'm a high school graduate, but a lot of my experience does come from, I've been actually in lower management and middle management, and I've done years of management experience at retail stores, up into district things. But I think what I can really add to this is bringing fresh blood into the legislature and the ideas of the communities and the issues of the communities as a regular community person myself, bringing those to the forefront and being able to fight for our communities and being our representation in Bismarck.
Thank you, Damien. Steve?
I've been a lifelong North Dakotan, and having had the privilege of serving in the legislature for 8 years, both on the Education Committee and Social Services and Veterans Affairs areas, the committee that provided me an opportunity to get an appreciation of what we were dealing with in those years, many years ago. I decided not to run again for re-election because we were focusing on my career at Gate City Bank and then also raising a family. And also having been on the school board for 6 years here in Fargo, as well as I think the importance of understanding and being aware and focusing on what the needs are. When you go door to door, you get an appreciation of what people are dealing with. But also, it's not just by going door to door, it's having the opportunity during all of these life experiences we've had, being a dad, being a president of a community bank, all of those that you're working with people on a day-to-day basis to understand what they have to deal with.
Thank you, Steve. And back to you, Ryan.
My experience that I would bring to the table is that I have worked closely with the Department of Health in the past when I was community co-chair of the Community Planning Group for HIV and Viral Hepatitis Prevention. So I helped guide federal funds on making sure that people are getting the care they needed throughout the state and preventing the spread of HIV. I also have experience with board of directors when I was down in Sioux Falls, South Dakota as board of directors for the Center for Equality. And I worked to help make sure that we made sure that people had a place to go when they needed it. Plus, I also have my degrees I have a business degree and associate's degree in business, and a bachelor's in social work, where I've worked with homeless individuals over the years and helped them find homes, which is very important for our voters.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, Hamida, you get to start this next round. And now the question is, finding adequate childcare is a problem in North Dakota. How should the legislature address this issue?
Well, that's a good question, and that is what I hear from parents every day when I knock at their doors. And childcare is a struggle for many North Dakotans, not only in District 10, but it's an issue, and we have waited too long to become a crisis in North Dakota. And now we are talking about it because it's affecting the workforce. And the legislative need to put, this should be an issue for both Democrat and Republican. It's not one side issue because it's affecting family, and everybody has a family and we all care about our families. So we need to put money and we need to put our brain into it to figure out how to do it. By doing that, we need to bring business owners on the table. We need to bring community leaders. We need to bring organizations and figure out together. North Dakota has money. It's not that we don't have money. It's only that we have waited this to become crisis. And I will be a voice for that.
Thank you. Damien.
Well, childcare is one of the most important things in our community and across North Dakota as well. We do need to make sure this is something that's provided. People can't work if their childcare costs more than the paycheck that they get from that job, which is the case from so many people I've talked to. And there's childcare that isn't open. And we are a wealthy state. We do have money that we can put towards these resources. There are also other avenues too. With an announcement that the president made today, we can look at the legalization of cannabis, recreational cannabis, tax it properly, and then we can apply that tax to, or use that to fund childcare and education.
Thank you. Steve?
What I've really appreciate about this dialogue regarding childcare is not just here, all of us talking about it, but it's both political parties that are really discussing it. And I think that's really critical. There may be different perspectives of how each political party look at it, but I think everybody realizes that it is an issue and something we need to deal with. The governor's task force has come up with recommendations. Also, there's a Senate and House committees that are looking at that during the interim and will be providing recommendations for the full House and Senate to consider this year. Just some things like, for example, it costs over $1 million to open up a new child care facility, okay? Can we use the legacy fund to provide low interest loans or no interest loans for those individuals that want to open up a new daycare facility? Also, a lot of times, those individuals may not be fully knowledgeable as far as how to run the business. They do a phenomenal job when it comes to childcare and working with them, but they need some assistance when it comes to running the business.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
Childcare is obviously very important, as everybody has said already, and it is preventing people from going to work, and so it is also a workforce issue. I think we also need to make sure that we're supporting our childcare workers as well and making sure they're paid their fair share. I think we need to make sure that they are receiving the education as well to be able to handle emergency situations like CPR, any first aid issues. I think it's important that as a state, we continue to discuss across both parties on ways that we can support our childcare and make sure that every corner of the state has access to childcare, because there's parts of the state that don't even have childcare facilities at all, that have made very hard decisions for families on if they want to pursue a career. Every individual should be able to pursue whatever life they want. And if there is barriers like access to childcare, that prevents somebody from being who they truly are.
Thank you, Ryan. Curtis?
As Steve alluded to, the people are starting to recognize across party lines that this is a deterrent to our economy, and it's a problem that the legislature needs to address. And when I first looked at this issue quite some time ago and saw that it was a big problem, I started thinking about what kind of solutions could we come up with. And what I think the legislature should consider and pursue and discuss is some type of public-private partnership, where if an employer has X number of employees and they're assisting their employees with their child care needs, then the state, I think, should step in. Steve mentioned the legacy fund. I think it would be a source. The state should step in and provide some type of financial incentive to help the child care providers and the employers who are helping them to continue to provide that child care, whether that be through reducing or subsidizing unemployment taxes or workers' comp premiums.
Thank you, Curtis. Okay, Damien, this question is for you. So President Biden announced today that he will pardon all prior federal offenses of simple marijuana possessions, a move that senior administrative officials have said would affect thousands of Americans. Biden has also encouraged governors to do the same at the state level. Would legalizing recreational marijuana be a priority for you at the state capitol?
Absolutely. Like I said before, recreational cannabis would provide an excellent avenue for new revenue into the state for our education, which is still well-funded as it is, and for childcare, and even for protecting the VA. This is a relic of a war that's clogging our prison systems. We're having to pay out of our taxes for this. This is unneeded. So I would absolutely support a move for legalization of cannabis.
Thank you, Damian. Steve?
Well, on the ballot this year, I believe measure number 2, the voters will have to make a decision on legalizing marijuana in North Dakota, along with a tax, I believe, at 5%. And then it also gives some discretion to the legislature to make some decisions as far as what department will be responsible for this whole area. I will support and vote for that on the ballot. I think that that's something that we should have in place. I think there's the protections and mechanisms there for employers to protect them as far as making sure that their employees are not engaged or involved with that. It allows, I believe, the resources to focus on those major crime areas and those other types of issues. So we'll know on November 8th as far as what the voters have decided.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
Yeah, it is a measure 2 that is coming up, and I believe that I will support it as well. Unfortunately, the making marijuana illegal across the country has been disproportionate to members of our community and has made it a problem within our overcrowded jail systems. So I support even Biden's pardoning of people with minor marijuana possession. Like previous people have said, that would bring revenue as long as it's done in a efficient way. I also want to make sure that with the legalization, that we also make sure that we continue to have mental health as a priority for that, and make sure that we help with addiction, and that some of that funds that are for the taxes for mental health are for marijuana go towards mental health and addiction and recovery.
Thank you, Ryan. Curtis?
Just a clarification on the question, if you could read the last part, would you support, I want to make sure I understand the premise of the question.
Would legalizing recreational marijuana be a priority for you at the state capitol? And it's been addressed about measures.
Thank you for clarifying that, and the answer is no, that would not be a priority for me. As we've already discussed, it's on the ballot. It's before the people. They've invoked their rights to put a measure on the ballot. And to be quite frank with you, I really don't care whether it passes or not. It's not something I've ever done. I get irritated when I hear a politician stand up at the microphone and say, yeah, I smoked a little dope back in the 60s. Everybody did. Well, I didn't. And I'm kind of proud of that. But if it passes, I don't care. If it doesn't pass, I don't care about that either.
Thank you, Curtis. Hamida?
Well, I have to say I've never used it, but it's not about me. It's about the people I represent. And if the people vote for it, it will be my #1 priority, and I will vote for it too.
Great. Thank you, Hamida. Steve, you're up next. Yes. So what infrastructure improvements should be priorities for the North Dakota legislature that will impact your district's constituents?
You know, the word infrastructure, childcare is critical. I'm not quite comfortable in the use of the word infrastructure when it comes to childcare, but it is what it is. And I think childcare is tantamount to the success of everything else that we do. And I think the opportunity for us to be able to work with the nonprofit organizations, the businesses, also, as Curtis has mentioned before, what everyone is doing and working together to come up with ideas and suggestions and utilizing the legacy fund, for example, in that area, and also really digesting what the governor has said in the area of child care, as well as the other task force that are out there. I think the big thing that legislators will need to do is not just read it, but take action on it. And that will be critical. So the child care is #1 when it comes to that.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
Infrastructure is an interesting concept, and childcare is definitely one that I would say priority. But in talking with our actual area where we live, we have a lot of apartments and we have a lot of people that don't necessarily have their own transportation. I think public transit is definitely something that's very important that we need to look at. In the city of Fargo alone, a bus only arrives on a bus stop every 30 minutes to an hour, which is hard to plan for somebody that needs to get across town. And sometimes it takes an hour or two to get across town. We need to have better infrastructure in our public transit system so that people can get to work on time and not spend money on Ubers, taxis, or try to find friends. This will also help with making sure people show up on time for work. It'll help our workforce by having that. That is one thing that we do lack in this state, and especially in the Fargo area.
Thank you, Ryan. Curtis?
One of the biggest infrastructure needs that I see out there is to enhance the water supply in eastern North Dakota and the natural gas supply. Both of those would be a real boost to economic development for the total eastern tier of the state. So that's something I'd like to see the state really tackle and move forward, is developing water supply to the eastern North Dakota and to get natural gas supply better supplied to this part of the state. And in addition to that, my number one campaign priority is to get back on the Judiciary Committee and do something about the ever-increasing rate of violent crime. I think there are infrastructure needs within our criminal justice system that we need to look at to help tackle that ever-growing problem, which is a serious threat to our public safety, and it's getting worse all the time.
Thank you, Curtis. Hamida?
Well, I will say it will be education, and to make sure that we recruit and retain teachers in our school, and also childcare. Childcare is a business that make other business work. So if we don't have enough childcare and affordable childcare, accessible and affordable childcare for residents, especially my district, District 10, is young families, and when you go out there and knock doors, you see children playing around, and if we don't have accessible childcare for parents, then it's hard for them to go to work. So my number one priority will be childcare and education if elected.
Thank you, Hamida. Damien?
Well, my priority is kind of a three-pronged attack. First of all, childcare, of course, is important. And then continuing along with that would be education then too. And also affordable housing would probably be my big one. Making it so people can afford their property taxes, making it so people live in apartments can afford houses, and making it so people that are unhoused can have one, can at least have a shelter over their head. And I believe we can use some funds to do some public housing options that would be helpful for a lot in our community, because we do have a lot, especially with veterans, of unhoused people. You don't see them, but they're there.
Thank you, Damien. Okay, Ryan, this next question is for you. A major barrier to home ownership is more than just prices. Property groups are buying up homes, driving up prices, and leaving fewer homes available to buyers. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I would have to do a little bit more research on that because I'm not 100% familiar with that aspect of it. I think barriers to housing is a lot of property taxes is an issue, but as for people buying up property and having it their own, I think when we have developers that are buying property, I think they need to be conscious and of the types of houses they have, that they have a nice mix of those houses and make sure that they are building affordable houses on all sides. But as I think for that question, I would have to do some more research before I could answer even more efficiently.
Okay. Thank you. Curtis?
Well, I think what you're discussing there is, this is the free market at work. And the free market will supply lower cost housing, and the free market will supply upper end housing. And I don't know what the state of North Dakota could do, the legislature could do to insert themselves into that process and interfere with that free market. I'm a great believer in letting the free market work. And government does have a role in helping people with affordable housing. But I'm not sure that you should force things on the private sector in that regard.
Thank you, Curtis. Hamida?
Well, I'm not I'm not sure about this question, but what I have to say is most of the people, when they are planning to buy a house, all they complain about is the special assessment that comes with the house. And if, if we can do something about that, is, lowering property tax and thinking how we make businesses accountable of paying the roads and stuff that families don't have to pay when they buy a house. So again, I'm not 100% sure, but it's something I need to learn as we go.
Thank you, Hamida. Damien.
May you repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course. So a major barrier to home ownership is more than just prices. Property groups are buying up homes, driving up prices, and leaving fewer homes available to lower income buyers. What are your thoughts on this?
That I am actually completely against. I am actually actually got almost trapped by that a couple years ago myself. I've been looking for a house, and suddenly they all disappeared because people from out of state are buying our houses, and they're basically trying to become out-of-state landlords. This is not okay. This is also creating a housing bubble, which we've seen what those do before, but that's still up in the air. But we need houses for North Dakotans that North Dakotans can buy and we can own. And that's a huge issue for me.
Thank you, Damien. Steve.
I think one thing that the legislature has done as far as when it comes to the housing area is the Renaissance zone authorities that communities can take advantage of. I serve on that authority here in Fargo, and what you can do is it's a multi-use faction where you can have low income, middle income, upper income, all in a diverse area, and it provides opportunities for income tax, property tax, cuts. In fact, you don't even pay property or income tax over these number of years. It's a benefit for the city because the property taxes will go up over the years, but also it's a benefit for all these individuals that can have affordable housing in certain areas. Also taking advantage of the Bank of North Dakota and the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency and what they can do for first-time home buyers is also a great benefit that we need to utilize and continue promoting that.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Curtis, this question is for you. What would you do to prevent gun violence in our state?
Well, I believe that we should have armed resource officers in schools to protect our children. They should be trained, they should be professionals, and they should not only be protecting from gun violence, they should be working with the students and getting to know them and getting them to trust them. And I think that's the number one thing we can do to protect our schools. Interestingly enough, the school resource officer idea was first advanced by the Obama administration in 2013. They saw the value in it and they advanced it. And I think in order to protect these horrific or stop these horrific incidents of violence against our children, that's the very best thing we can do.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Hamida?
Will you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What will you do to prevent gun violence in our state?
Well, first of all, we need laws that are very common sense around guns. What kind of guns can go into schools and why? And again, I'm not a big fan of having, resource officers in school. I prefer having social workers and psychologists and all those people to be with our children. But again, I will always support sensible gun laws.
Okay, thank you, Hamida. Damien?
Well, I believe this approach, first of all, definitely there's always sensible gun laws that need to be enacted. We've had them before, and we didn't have as many killings. And now we've gotten rid of an assault weapons ban, and we had a lot of killings. But one issue that I find with gun violence is a good chunk of gun violence is actually self-inflicted gun violence from people with mental health issues. If we can work on mental health issues, we can kind of head that part off at the pass. And I've heard of talk of possible legislation of being able to maybe hand your gun off to police without any penalty if you feel that you may be in danger to yourself or another person, and collect it when you're ready. Some stuff like this is common sense things that we can do to help protect all of us.
Thank you, Damien. Steve?
I think, as Curtis mentioned, the resource officers, I think, are a valuable tool to use. It's not just one all, but they're very important in that they're not just there for safety, they're also there to assist and work and determine, are there certain issues, are there certain problems, are there certain individuals that need help, and that they can defer them to the right people within that area. Simley School in Bismarck is now coming up with a program that they can assist teachers as well as other individuals within the school to determine who needs help, who needs assistance, and who are the right people to do it. They're more of the person that is aware of what's happening, and then they can defer it to someone else who has that knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
Obviously, school gun violence has been an epidemic in this country for a long time. I feel that as a state legislator that there isn't laws that we can pass to protect our kids for under gun laws because we have open borders between different states and guns can cross states. I believe this is a national issue. I believe this is something that needs to be done in Washington to control gun violence across the country. I also agree with Hamida when she says we need more social workers in our system, in our school system, so we can talk to people. Adding guns to a school scares me because there has been studies in the past that have shown that adding an armed individual into a situation has actually created more death than less. So I believe we need to make sure that we need to reverse the scare tactics that we have done to our kids over the last decade, and we need social workers to help do that.
Thank you, Ryan. And then this is our last question. I'll make this a bit of a speed round. So Hamida, what is your position on reproductive rights and what role should the legislature play in addressing them?
Well, I do believe reproductive rights should be private to the person who's dealing with it. Nobody else should talk about it. And it's not an issue that is open for debate, just like any other medical issue that is not open for debate. So women should not be attacked by what they do with their body or how they choose to address it. I will always fight for that.
Thank you, Hamida. Damien?
Well, this is a pretty straightforward question. Reproductive freedom, it is something that shouldn't be held back by the government. It's something between a woman and her doctor. But when the government tries to interfere in the other way and stop it, that's a problem. So now we have to protect reproductive freedom because of the attacks.
Thank you, Damien. Steve?
There was a bipartisan movement in the North Dakota legislature years ago for the trigger law. And right now, one of the key issues that the legislature will have to deal with in this trigger law is there's a lot of serious concerns about it when you look at that. There is no protection for our medical profession as far as dealing when it comes to ectopic pregnancies, pre-prom, preeclampsia, all of those areas that it really puts exposure to our medical profession when it comes to the health and well-being of the mother. I think that at this point, we talk about government intrusion and involvement. I think it should be brought to a vote of the people in the 2024 election for them to determine what is the best way for North Dakota to deal with the abortion issue.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
As Steve alluded to, that we should bring this to the people. We did bring this to the people in 2014, and the people voted to have legalized abortion, and the legislature overrode that. I think we need to go back and listen to the people and stop the trigger law. Secondly, the Dobbs decision has created a problem with all sorts of medical decisions that go way beyond women's rights. It has opened us up to doors of people that is going to be attacked next is IVF, transgender rights, and we need to make sure that we're protecting them. People need to leave medical decisions between them, their doctor, the God they worship, and any loved ones within their family. Government shouldn't be involved in any of those medical decisions, period.
Thank you, Ryan. And Curtis?
Well, I've always taken a pro-life position in my former service in the Senate, and I'll continue to do that. But having said that, I also believe in some important exceptions for any legislation regulating abortion, especially IVF. This is personal to me. My daughter is in the room. My grandson is with her. And she has given me my permission to say that she went through IVF treatment, and I think there should be very strong exceptions and protections for the IVF process. There also should be exceptions for the health and well-being of the mother, and including one that is not currently protected, the ectopic pregnancies, as Steve alluded to. 70% of ectopic pregnancies are fatal. We have to be able to allow medical professionals to treat those. I think there also should be exceptions for a developing fetus that has severe abnormalities that are inconsistent with life, which is a well-defined legal and medical term.
Thank you, Curtis. Well, this concludes the question and answer part of the forum. Thank you to all the candidates for participating. For the audience at home, if you'd like to continue to learn more about your candidates, the League has partnered with the Forum Communications to present the vote411.org Voters Guide to help you learn more about North Dakota candidates' positions and their candidates and positions on important issues. Stay tuned to the Forum and League Facebook page and the voter guide at Vote411. And now we will begin with your closing remarks. Damien?
Excuse me. Well, I'd like to say thanks again for giving us the opportunity to come up here and speak about the issues. There are a lot of issues facing our community, and it is time to get to work on them. We've spoken about just, a handful of them tonight, and there are so many different things we could say about each one too. But it is time to get to work, and I'm a community member here to get to work for us.
Thank you, Damien. Steve?
North Dakota is fourth in the nation when it comes to the youngest median age, 35, and that has provided us with plenty of opportunities, but also provided us with plenty of challenges as well. I think it's critical that collaboratively in working with businesses, nonprofit organizations, the legislature, schools, higher education, that we can provide and meet these challenges that are facing us before everyone here tonight, as well as those that are out there on TV. It's exciting when you look at this and the difference that all of us that can make. My 8 years experience in the legislature would allow me the opportunity to start running on day one because of the knowledge that I have had in working with people. I've always believed in community involvement and community service, and I think that's very important. I would encourage all of you to vote for me on November 8th. And thank you for this evening.
Thank you, Steve. Ryan?
I just want to reiterate, thank you again for this evening. It's been great listening to the different opinions of everybody on here. I am looking forward to working across the aisle with everybody to make sure that we make a better North Dakota. I will make sure that I'm listening to my constituents, and I think it's very important that we continue to listen to our constituents and vote with our constituents, not against our constituents. I think in the past, our legislature has often went against what the citizens have wanted. They have also caved to some of our corporate interests instead of listening to the people. I think we need to make sure that we are spending our resources on helping citizens, making sure that we have access to mental health care, childcare, public transit, that all can be done with the resources that we have available and the income that we continue to have from our natural resources, our taxes that we currently collect. I hope you will let me prove that I will listen to you and vote for me on November 8th.
Thank you, Ryan. Curtis?
Well, again, I'd like to emphasize my prior experience in the Senate of 6 years, and as Steve said, we can hit the ground running on day one. And I'd also like to, in closing, emphasize my number one campaign priority, which is to get back on the Judiciary Committee, where I served previously as vice chair, and take action from that position to do something about the ever-increasing rate of violent crime, which is plaguing not only Cass County, but all of North Dakota. I put together a spreadsheet, which is on my website, olafsonfornd.com, and that illustrates that in Cass County, over the period from 2011 to 2020, violent crime has increased 46% in Cass County and 38% statewide. And I'm not an expert on the criminal justice system, even with my past experience, but I'll be working with people who are prosecutors, and of which my daughter is one. And also Drew Wrigley is coming out with a new crime initiative.
Thank you, Curtis. Hamida?
Well, thank you again to the league for hosting this event. Thank you for the audience, the ones who are here in person and those who are watching online. Thank you to my fellow running mates and people who are running against me for being here tonight. I will say this, North Dakota need leaders who will listen, and we will be those leaders for District 10. People are struggling a lot with so many things in our district, and it is very sad because North Dakota is one of the richest states. And we are not highly populated, and we can address all these issues if only we have people who listen us. Tonight, the viewers have heard our vision and what we want to do for North Dakota, and I humbly ask for their votes. People have been ignored for so long, and that has to stop. And by doing so, you need to elect people who will listen to you, and I am one of them. I ask for your vote in November 8th.
Thank you, Hamida. And that is the last forum of the evening. So I will say thank you again to the candidates for a wonderful forum. And I guess that's adieu.